I'm doing great. It's great to hear your voice. We are excited about tonight's broadcast.
Well, good to be here. Good to be here.
Let's turn it.
How may I assist?
How can you assist? Well, you got to help us. We've got several questions, of course. First of all, folks, this is Mike from around the world from the Council of Time. We're so glad he's with us tonight. And Mike, I keep rolling around in my mind some of the things you've talked about over the last 5-6 years that you've been coming on these shows. And here we go again. We have an asteroid scraping by tonight. It won't hit us. It's gonna miss us by 0.06 lunar distance. But they just keep coming from nowhere. We spot them 3-4 days in advance, and we just got to deal with it. And there's even articles out now that they're in 2 weeks, Mike. They're going to hold a huge conference in Washington D.C. They're bringing in rocket scientists. They're bringing in astronomers. They're bringing in people who really, folks that really study the stars from the observatories, some very, Elon Musk, those kind of people, on how they're going to be able to shoot down or blow up incoming asteroids or comets. Do you have any information about this conference coming up in a couple weeks?
Well, let's look at the obvious. Why in the world would they did this before, right? You remember they do things in stages. So the first one was that announcement that they were able to see by way of infrared, right? Most, or not most, I'll say about a small percentage or the major percentage of the inbound objects that will get to us. So now they have another one that they're coming up with some years later to help comfort everybody to say, hey, look, we are developing an ability to knock down flying debris. Right now, why would they do this? Why would there even be a press release or any type of conference on this in the first place? Unless they need the public to be reassured. Let me give you a message that they won't give you. Hey, despite what you see, all of it won't hit you. Right? Wouldn't that be one of the tactics here is to somewhat calm the public down prior to the public seeing things. See, we've entered a time now where it's almost impossible to hide the fact that everything is turning upside down, right? That things are really becoming extreme. And so with more and more people beginning to experience and unfortunately die from events that 6 years ago, people said, oh, that will never take place. Well, now people are dying from things, or dying from debris, more debris death, that's increasing. And people are beginning to see the larger fragments coming in, or us flying into certain things, right? So with that said, this would be a tactic to calm everybody down, to let them know, hey, we have a handle on this. So we're in the know. We know what's coming. That's the whole idea. Okay. Because if they can communicate to people that somehow they know what's coming, the people will not worry about it. They won't take an interest in it. Thus, they won't pay attention to certain prophecies or anything else. And it won't give an individual like yourself, who's out there saying, hey, these things are coming, it won't give you that too much attention.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring it up, Mike, because there was a couple of articles written, because I did a video on Apophis. Apophis is going to approach the Earth very close on Friday the 13th, April the 13th, 2029. According to scientists, it's going to scrape past the Earth. It's literally going to go through what they call a gravitational keyhole, or at least they're hoping it does. They said if it goes through the gravitational keyhole, it will just miss the Earth, and they anticipate that. But it comes back 7 years later, all bets are off. Now, then they said, so Begley is bringing this up, and then he quotes scripture out of Revelation 8, that we are going to have two deep impacts. One looks like it's an asteroid. The other one looks like it's a star. The Bible calls it a star or wormwood. So they write an art. So they said, Begley, here he goes again. Don't worry about it. NASA says nothing's going to threaten us for 20 years. But then 2 weeks later, they're holding this major conference on we got to figure out a way to shoot something down. So to your point, this is a reassurance, okay? So you're saying this is just to reassure the public. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about Bible prophecy. Don't worry about that meteorite that exploded over Washington, D.C. 2 nights ago. Don't worry about the 4 that have over Russia in the last 3 months. Don't worry about the one that fell over in Gainesville, Florida. Just relax. We've got this under control. So that's the process.
That's right. That's right. The more they can do this, the more they do this, the more they can set the public against those who may say the opposite of what they're saying, right?
Yep. All right, now, Mike, here's the next one. You told us 4 years ago, I remember you saying this. Look, planes will start to fall out of the sky. You said it's going to happen in about 3 to 4 years. This was 4 years ago. I went back to look and see when we had this discussion. It was around 4 years ago. You said in 3 to 4 years, planes will just start falling out of the sky. It would start with the small planes and then later bigger planes. Well, 2 days ago, Mike, we had 3 planes, and the reports all said one was in Long Island, New York, one was in Chile, and one was in Mount Everest, where the planes, all 3 reports were, the one pilot in Long Island said he was going into land, and he said his plane just fell out of the sky, and he got tangled up in some power lines, and he survived. But the other 2 pilots did not. But eyewitnesses said it looked like the planes fell out of the sky. Now, I'm not sure why you said that would start happening. Something about density, or can you help explain this?
Yeah, when an aircraft is flying, the pressure over the airfoil, on the main wing, right, is faster than below the wing. That's called lift. That's called lift. But if the atmosphere begins to increase by way of density, you have a weight added, an opposition weight to lift added. Okay, that's one thing. Now, for the electronic, that will decrease lift on an aircraft, which means that aircraft will have to fly at higher speeds to maintain altitude.
Well, what is the density? Okay. What is the density? What's causing?
Oh, we're having all these inbound particles that are coming into the solar system. They are in fact collecting in the atmosphere. That's a term I coined called atmospheric compression, right?
Yep.
I coined that term atmospheric compression due to a buildup in the upper atmospheres, which will in fact begin to condense everything. Which means maybe a flight level of 14,000 feet. Well, then once it's totally condensed, that's going to be near the range of 5,000 feet. So you're going to have the same type of lift required at 15,000 feet. Now to achieve a flight altitude of 5,000 feet, you're going to have to have a whole lot more thrust. So that is this particle buildup in the upper atmospheres. Now, how can that be verified? The particle buildup in the upper atmospheres. Well, people will begin to notice a specific change in the atmosphere. Period. It's going to look different. It's not going to be like it used to be. And then flights will have to fly at lower altitudes, not higher altitudes, but lower altitudes. And so that's going to be a common sense thing. Of course, right now, because there's no real context for this, because the mainstream is not, they're not calculating all this stuff publicly, it's going to sound like nonsense until it takes place. The other portion of this is due to the magnetosphere. As the magnetosphere continues to redirect these highly charged particles into various parts of the Earth, and indeed collapse in other areas, plasma, right? St. Elmo's fire. What's encountered by aircraft is going to begin to change. The effects of that is going to change in the electronics of an aircraft. And by the way, now we're trying to shift all aircraft to lithium-based powered systems, which probably is not a good idea, because with these changes, these static changes in the atmosphere, and these electrical potentials in the atmosphere, there's going to be a problem. There's going to have to be some type of an upgrade to keep these systems going in the aircraft, because if something interrupts that jet engine, the propulsion of maybe a smaller Cessna type aircraft, then you're going to have a problem, a severe problem. These things, if this continues, which it likely will, because that potential for static in the atmosphere is going to increase, the electronic potential in the atmosphere, or the electrical potential in the atmosphere is going to increase, which means more plasma discharges. And because of what each continent is based out of, the minerals in those continents is going to determine how bad the lightning strikes are. We're going to have problems all over the place, because these particles that are coming in, the magnetosphere protects the Earth from these highly charged particles by redirecting them on its lines of force by that magnetosphere, right? Bringing it inside of the Earth where it's harmless. Well, it's supposed to be harmless, but due to an influx of these particles coming in, we're taking on too many particles. Now, how do we know this is going to happen also? There's going to be a notable change in the sun's light and how it shines. That the color of that yellow sun that you see is going to change big time. It's going to change.
What color? What kind of color will it be?
I would say first you're going to see a brightening of it. It'll be a white color, which we're getting close to that now. The brilliance of the sun it's actually brightening. Is actually becoming a little bit more bright than normal. Our atmosphere will also begin to match that. It's going to begin to illuminate. So our atmosphere is going to have a notable change. Everybody will see it. Nobody's going to explain that now because they'll end up going, giving their explanation, their spin on things.
Mike, people are getting sunburnt a lot worse down in Florida and more closer to the equator you go. There's no doubt about this, that the sun, first of all, radiation is 18% higher than it was 3 years ago. And it's got to be from the incoming radiation from these waves of energy. And also, you've already explained last couple weeks ago when you were on that the waves of energy are affecting the sun. Can I ask a question, guys? There's almost 3,000 people here right now with us live on YouTube. Could all of you hit the thumb button right now, hit the like button, drive the algorithm up, and it will immediately force this broadcast to go out on millions of other opportunities out there. It just pushes the algorithm higher, and that brings more people in to find out what's going on, that there's this many people. There's more people here right now than CNN and MSNBC. So get it out there. We have to fight through the algorithms. All right, Mike, let me ask you a question. As we're looking at this, we're seeing several things happening that you predicted would happen. Lightning bolts. In India and Pakistan, we got 103 people dead, 64 from lightning. We had the dust storms, what looked like from biblical proportion, thunderstorms, hail, extreme winds, and 103 dead, almost 200 injured. They said the death toll will rise, but 64 are dead from thunderbolts. They died from electrocution. You predicted these things would be happening. Can you tell us why the waves of energy would cause this?
Well, let me explain it this way. Those waves that are coming in, these particles that are coming in, that are breaching the heliosphere, and we need some solar flares, right? That will be a blessing, believe it or not. A bunch of solar flares to rebuild the heliosphere, but yeah. Every time we have I said this once before, I have to say it again. Every time we have a solar flare, every single time, it just so happens that each flare ends up hitting in the spot of the heliosphere that's weakening. Every single time. That is, you know what? I'm a believer in Christ. Of course, everybody knows that, right?
Right.
Pastor Paul, there's some dumb theories out there, and there's what we believe in the Bible. Every time I see something like this, I don't need the proof, but I'll tell you this: the sun cannot be just a ball of ignited matter that most scientists believe. I honestly believe that the sun, because it's happening like this all the time, there's engineering involved. There's an intelligent design involved. There's an absolute precision mechanism involved. In fact, statistically, right, when they say that, well, our chances of getting hit by a comet is 1 in a billion, well, it's actually the opposite. It's a 1 in a billion chance we haven't been hit by one. So what in the world is maintaining all of this? Every time I see it, I'm somewhat, I just fall clueless, because I'm saying, how can people believe that the sun just, was a coalescing ball of matter that ignited or something like that? How can that be possible when solar flares hit in the part of the heliosphere where we absolutely need it, like it's constantly repairing the heliosphere to protect the entire solar system.
Wow! So you're saying that God, that God is directing solar flares from off the sun, intelligently designing it so that when He'll release it, so that it hits the Earth in our weakest part of our magnetosphere, and it will re-strengthen it because it's weakening. We're in the end times. But God is trying, it's like the grace of God is preserving us till the prophetic prophecies come to pass. He's trying his best to save us. Is that what you're saying?
And he's maintaining it beyond all odds, beyond all any perceived mishaps. It's maintaining, despite what anybody thinks it's doing. Why is it doing such a precise work? Now, they're not going to bring any mainstream science into bear to sit there and corroborate any of this. In fact, they'll do the opposite, because they have to support that theory of evolution that I just can't take it. The Big Bang Theory, I can't take that, right? Big boom and everything, I can't. But honestly, these, and then when you get down to light particles, all matter consists of photons. Photons are light particles. So light is holding everything together. All this other stuff that they're coming up with, science basically, anybody who's listening, is an attempt to explain what God has already made. That's all it is. It's an attempt to explain it. They will not control it. They can sometimes redirect it. Or, you know what, I have a saying I go by, Pastor Paul, Satan can manipulate. Right? He can manipulate God's creation, but God commands His creation.
Amen.
See, if God commands every aspect of His creation, but with us going back to the sun, when you study things like this and you begin to see it, you can't help but to notice the unnoticeable, and it opens up your eyes a little bit more to what's going on. Not that I don't need my eyes open in that aspect, but goodness gracious, who in the world can explain that one, right? Because our heliosphere should have been overwhelmed by now. It really should have. But wouldn't you know it, every time a weak area hits, which they observe, a solar flare, right? Great. Now, who's doing this? So, the Earth likewise. This Earth should have collapsed a long time ago. Something should have hit it a long time ago. You're telling me we're going to have all these near misses every single year, but they're near misses. Nothing is hitting us. It's hitting everywhere else, but it's not hitting the Earth. It's not hitting those planets that we absolutely need, right? People can't see the makeup of our universe. Can they not see the job of Jupiter, the asteroid belt? See, if science were was created, they can see the mechanics in the solar system and how it keeps biology alive. Our very molecules are kept together by gravitational forces being sustained precisely, right? It's like a pi, 3.14, right? That's a constant in mathematics. So let me ask you this. When dealing with celestial mechanics, how things work, why are the constants out there the same exact number all the time, despite all the changes over all these hundreds of years, and yet we can still use the same mathematical formulas? Something is amiss, and everybody else can fall.
What about
the kingdom of the beast? I shall not,
right?
Because it's anyway. Go ahead, Pastor.
You're on a roll there, Mike, and you're throwing out you get the Fibonacci sequence. It's perfect. Everything goes around the Fibonacci sequence, the golden rule. You're right, Mike. Let's just be honest, guys. There was no Big Bang. It wasn't just some accident. God designed this entire thing. And the more you study it in science, the more absolute perfection this entire creation is. And that's why, Mike, you're getting all excited here tonight, because you know the truth. And it's one thing to know the truth, but it's another thing then to go prove the truth. Then that just like, what? So anyway, okay, I got more questions for you. Time we'll get carried away here and just preach all night. But okay, Mike, people want to know, okay, the dust storms, yes, we're having, and we know that. But I'm more worried about the dust storms that are coming from the heavens. Look, let's look at this. Let's be honest. We do have waves of energy. Today, 40 different, or I don't know, I saw 35, maybe there was some more. Somewhere between 35 and 40 volcanoes were simultaneously erupting or spewing or burping or whatever you want to call it. it's like the Earth. I always thought that if there was a few volcanoes going off, that would relieve pressure from the core of the Earth, the magma. But this is like the magma's overwhelming the Earth. Is something about Planet X or a gravitational pull, or is it the radiation heating the core of the Earth? What's causing the Earth to slowly break apart here?
Radiation translates as heat, right? So the more the magnetosphere absorbs these high-speed particles, right, it's going inside of the Earth. It's not going to get cold. It's going to translate into heat activity. Okay, that activity is driving a magma event, right? The same magma event that I so passionately warned about a couple of years ago, because it's a big deal, is going to change our geology, right? It's going to begin to surface in areas it shouldn't, and lots of things are at risk. That's something no one can actually go and alter, right? Those are huge forces working underneath the crust of the Earth. Now, I don't get into what's underneath that, because I know a lot of people believe in what they believe. If I haven't seen it, I really can't believe in it, science-wise. But we have an issue with magma underneath the Earth, and we need more volcanic eruptions to offset some of the energy that's coming in. I tried to run a simple simulation of the Earth, the magnetosphere, and all the particles being absorbed or redirected into the poles by our magnetosphere into the Earth, and what the volume of that energy would equate and what it would take on the surface of the Earth to relieve. So I had to translate high-speed particles, each mass of each particle, into energy. Right? It's already radiation into energy, which translates into a type of movement energy, I'll say, to put it in layman's terms, which translates into heat because we have pressure. Okay? That pressure is going to take at least 80% of our volcanoes to erupt simultaneously to relieve all that energy over the course of many years.
80%?
Right? Now, because I was shocked at this. I thought it would take, maybe we had enough volcanoes to go off to relieve the pressure maybe in a few hours. No, it would take years to do that, right?
Mike, there's 13 volcanoes in just California alone. If 80% of them had to be going off at the same time, 80% totally globally, I mean, you're talking 10, let's just say 10 volcanoes would need to be going off in just California. You're saying because of the incoming radiation that's heating the core of the Earth, the only way to keep this Earth from just totally exploding would be we need volcanoes erupting, constantly spewing lava to relieve the pressure. But that would mess. What would it do? What would that do to the climate? What would it do to this Earth's climate?
Well, that part wouldn't be good, but at least it would alleviate some of that pressure, so some of the larger earthquakes wouldn't happen, because if that pressure is back building, right? It's back building. So every day we don't have adequate eruptions, we know that the crust is going to begin to shift. It would only take a slight, a lot of people, when you talk about these theories of an inbound object, and you already know I believe in a twin system. We have a binary system here. I believe it.
Okay, now let me clarify that for the listeners, because we got new people here. In other words, you believe in a binary system. In other words, you believe there is some type of large entity, whether we call it, the ancients called it Nibiru. It's been called Planet X for about a century. Now the terminology we're getting is planet number 9, or some are calling it the Goblin or a dwarf star. But it doesn't matter. What you say, you do believe that there is this large binary system on the edges of our solar system that's that's coming in, that's bringing a lot of energy and waves in the heavens.
Yeah, I believe in a binary system. It's so funny too, because in a binary system, right, when it's beginning to swing back in, let me give an example of this inertia I'm talking about and how it works. If it were in a binary system, two stars having their meetup point in the middle somewhere, right, that goes all the way out. Well, if the secondary sun gets halfway through, right, it can still be years off. Now, hear me on this. Suppose halfway through it was 40 years away, right, or 3,000 years away, for that matter. Now, all it has has to do is move. As it continues to move, that 3,000 years is cut in half, the closer it gets. So when it's 20 years away, or 2,000 years away, if it just by moving a fraction, that's cut in half. Now it's no longer 2,000 years away, but 1,000 years away. Then that's cut in half. Now it's no longer 1,000 years away, right? 500 years away. Then that's cut in half. Now it's 250 years away. Then that's cut in half. That's cut in half. That's cut in half. So what we have here is an object that can be undetectable for 1,000 years. Then all of a sudden, when you detect it, it's too late. Because in about 5 days, it'll be right there at your neck, right? Now, when it swings in a binary system, and what I mean by that, it picks up momentum. It speeds up as it enters in close, right? I'm always reminded of the scripture about time, things being cut short, right? Time being cut short. Or no flesh would have been saved. No flesh at all would have been saved.
Right.
In a binary system, in the observations of a binary system, right? Especially some of the old ones, the closer it gets, it just travels exponentially in speed. It speeds up so fast. I mean, it zips in so fast that when you see it, it's too late. It's just simply too late. You're done for.
Well, can I say something, Mike? Because Mike Brown, and I know you're familiar with him. He's at Caltech, and he used to be with NASA. He's an extremely respected scientist. His partner, Bat-Chin, the two of them they were just on Coast to Coast 2 weeks ago. There was I read an article about them. They are now in Hawaii at the big observatory, and they are staying there, they said. They're not leaving. Every night they sit and they study on the big observatory telescope that's got a special lens on it. It's got a special ultra infrared lens. They study the stars. They study deep into space. They're looking for Planet X, or whatever you want to call it, binary system. And they said they are studying and they're straining and they're looking. They know it's there because all the numbers from the gravitational pull, the effect on the sun, what it's doing to the earth and all the other planets, they know it's there because of what the effects of it. So they say they're going to stay there till they see it. And what you're saying is when they see it, it's too late. In other words, we won't have much time left. And when the Bible says God said he would shorten the days for the elect's sake, lest there be no flesh saved, that's really kind of what this is about, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'd say something else too. If a person is wise, right? Just like we have Pluto, we have Jupiter, right? So if our sun was a threat to another universe, right? You wouldn't so much look for the sun, but a planet orbiting the sun, right? Because if you could see the planet, at least that would give you headway. I guarantee you they're looking for anything that's moving in a specific motion that they can catch in motion and say, is that a planet? Is that an object of it? Before we actually see it, or what is that? Because once they detect it, there's no more time left. You talk about, you're not going to make preparations. You just can't do it. The exponential speed at which it will increase is phenomenal. Now, I have to tell you about another observation. You ready for this?
Okay, I'm ready.
This is by way of observations. Because they've been tracking solar systems for a long time, and they've had some things pointed in on certain star systems for a long time, so they have seen certain things. Now, I don't know why they won't share this with people. In a binary system, or a system with more than one star, when they meet up at a specific point, right, the colder star, which is still hot, but it's a colder star, begins to do something to the bright star. And what happens is the gravitational pull is so incredibly strong on both stars. Now follow me on this, that the cold star begins to suck the photons out of the hot star.
What?
So all the light, hear me on this, all the light from the active star, right, is redirected into the cold star. And it does not go out away from the star anymore. It winks out because all that light, all the photons are redirected into the other star. So it recharges off of its twin. And by the time it leaves, right, which is get this, it normally orbits in that fashion in a binary system. They will swap places due to their size. If we have one in proximity to our size, it will take about 14 to 15 days, right? 14 to 15 days during its entrance, when the sun goes black, the sun will be black because all the photons are going to be redirected. We see the photons of the sun hitting in the atmosphere, harmless photons. If they're redirected into a twin star, we're not going to see the photons. All of them are going to be sucked in by the twin star, the cold star, which will recharge as it shoots back out, then the light returns. But while that other star is in proximity, you're not going to see the photons. They're going to be sucked into the other star as it's circling around the major star.
Okay, now, Mike, in the Bible, in the book of Joel, chapter 3, it says in verse 15, okay, it says, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining, and the Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem and the heavens, and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. So this is saying that there's a day coming, the sun and the moon will be darkened and the stars will withdraw their shining. Are you saying the smoke, the poof that comes off that star will hide the sun and the moon from us for a few days, maybe 3, maybe, I don't know, and maybe another scripture says that a third of the stars, you won't be able to see them. So is that what you're talking about?
Well, the darkness of the sun turning black is an absence of the photons hitting Earth. The light won't reach the Earth. The light will be redirected to this other star.
For how long, Mike? For how long?
About through observations, I can only say about 14 days.
We'll be dead.
These are for some of the smaller systems out there, right?
We'll be dead.
About 14 days. But something else happens too, because as this happens, they did notice a red hue in the other bodies, the other bodies around these systems. In other words, I'm going to give you a scenario on Earth that I ran. I'm trying to computerize this model now, right? Of course, they cut access to one of the computers, so I can't use that one anymore. Anyway, so I'm trying to run this simulation in real time. Here's what it is. Now, I keep seeing these things. I saw something. I was running a binary simulation. As the photons were going into the smaller star, right? Naturally, the Earth would heat up. We would have volcanism on the Earth with a lot of smoke.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
As we have the volcanism, I noticed something. As the photons are redirected towards that other star, the hue of the Earth will light the moon red.
It will turn the moon red. Okay, so now the scripture says in Joel, it says, we have the scripture that says, in Joel 2, it says, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord shall come.
That was in the simulations. In eclipses, it happens one way, but this time, due to volcanism, the hue of the Earth, right? The hue of the Earth, the light of magma itself hit the moon. It was hitting the moon, causing the moon to appear like a red blob in the sky. More like a blob or a blob dot, right? And if a twin system came in, the gravitational forces of this thing would be such that the sun would actually go into some type of hyper state of being. Let's put that in play. It'll go into this hyper phase where volcanism on the Earth would really be notable. I mean, things would go off on the Earth long before it ever came to suck the light out, and it would begin to do that double wobble thing. In that time, we'd have magma discharges all over the place. We would have, our atmosphere would be severely charged, and the hue of the Earth would be red, right? It would be red. Now, I know that a lot of people have done their homework to verify these writings of the ancient world, which are fine, but there's only one issue with that. In 2 of the cases, we did not have the same. There was not the same experience in 2 of the cases. They were a bit offset. They were a bit different, which suggests to me that this system has planets involved, and these planets are more like disruptors, right? If that is the case, and they come into our solar system, then one of them, it may have such a set cycle during that closeness of that binary phase that we do get interrupted by a type of object that's not quite, it doesn't quite look solid, but let's just say a little different. Because in a few of these systems, they have noticed some strange anomalies. That's all they can say is that they're not solid. There's something else. They're just not solid. They're constantly moving, but they're not solid. They change the shape.
Okay, now, Mike, does that kind of, the Bible says we're going to see great signs and fearful sights in the heavens. And those, that's in Luke 21. And Luke 21 also says men's hearts will fail them for fear for looking after those things coming upon the earth. So it doesn't have to be a standard asteroid or even a standard comet, although we are going to have two deep impacts. We know that. But just the events they see, the things that are coming, maybe the waves of energy and all the disruption that it brings. I mean, what you're saying is, and I guess I have to ask you, studying back during the days of the plagues of Egypt, Mike, one of the plagues was 3 days of darkness that came upon the earth. And studying also the Peruvian scripts as well as the Mayans recorded, as well as North American Indian legend, and as well as Asian reports. During the time of the plagues of Egypt, there was some really crazy stuff going on in other parts of the earth. So
yes.
Could it be that this binary system has been here before or has passed by before?
I believe it has. And I believe it was a bit distant, but I went into some heavier readings of some of the things that are missing from what people have read. Anyway, to make a long story short, it's a bad scenario. It's just an impossible scenario, right? It really is an impossible scenario. In fact, it's so impossible that if that time, when this time begins, when it begins to take place, the precursors to this, like the charged atmosphere is one of those things. Volcanism is another one of those things. And I just recently started looking into things that are missing from the public, and we're living, it's almost like we're living in the precursors now. But not only that, there was a change in mankind because of the magnetosphere, right? And spiritual things, right?
Okay, Mike.
A lot of people...
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt you, but this is a question that we had to ask you. It was on my list. 1,000 walruses jumped off a cliff in Russia and killed themselves. That's on videotape. I've seen it. The walruses go one at a time to the cliff and jump. 1,000 walruses. Now, I do know that in the Bible, 2,000 hogs killed themselves when they got possessed by the demons that came out of the man from Gadara. They had the legion of demons. But I'm looking at this, watching these walruses and wondering, is there something going on that's affecting their minds that you keep talking about that's going to affect the animals first and then later the humans?
Well, yes. And with the animals, a lot of people will see that now it's bad with the walrus and with mammals, things in the mammal area, because they operate by magnetite also. They have magnetic cells, right? They do. Magnetic cells, magnetite, and other areas of the brain that control types of their behavior. We have it, but we don't operate by the flesh like that, right? That they're stuck operating by the flesh, which is probably why a demonic force would find them so easy to possess like that. Anyway, as our magnetosphere continues to change, and it is changing, and this is one of my, if I give any warning, it will be this, that a person not trust their thoughts. Now, it does get into a type of spiritual conversation, which everybody's going to freely have here shortly. Trust me on that one, because people are going to come to you, Pastor Paul, and say, Pastor Paul, what is happening? So you know what? A lot of ministers better get ready to explain the spiritual happenings. And what I mean by this is that people are going to perceive more and more things. More and more things are not going to be invisible anymore. This is a domain nobody really wants to enter, but that day is coming quick, and it's going to be a long and arduous time people will go through anyway. These animals who operate by magnetite, that's going to be affected by the magnetosphere, right? So any change in the magnetic field lines that are outside of the Earth, that shield the Earth, are going to also change the directional habits of an animal. It's also going to change the mental state of an animal. So you can have an animal that can be non-stressed, be totally stressed, through some type of interruption of the magnetosphere, or certainly the absence of the magnetosphere in certain areas, and that can happen and has happened, and it's happening more often than not now. As this continues, as the magnetosphere fluctuates, I mean, I would say this is not prophecy. This is just a mathematical prediction that I would say the fluctuations in the magnetosphere are going to cause people to go crazy. One of the symptoms of this, of the magnetosphere, is an instant loudness in your brain. Now, that's the best way I can explain it. They have done this in laboratories. They have caused people to go temporarily insane, but with small magnets, Pastor Paul, that you can fit on your pinky. Okay, so magnets have a severe they can cause a severe change in the body. They have caused people to go to the point of murder somebody else. They have had husband and wife in there who love each other, and they have totally stripped them of any compassion through magnetism. Small magnets. We're talking about magnets that the average person has maybe in a set of headphones or something like that. We're not talking about major magnets or anything like that. We're talking about the manipulation of a magnetic force so tiny that it can be recreated by anybody. And it's enough to cause one person to murder another. And after they did these tests, of course they didn't allow them to do it, right? But after these tests, they said, well, what were you feeling? And they didn't even remember what they were doing.
Mike, hang on to this thought for a minute. Folks, we're at the top of the hour. Can we go a little longer, Mike? Can you hang in here for another 10, 15?
Yeah, we can.
Hang on one second, folks. Listen, what he's talking about, we're going to ask him. Brock, you brought this up 2 weeks ago when Mike was here. The law of the magnetic law is changing. Let's do a quick 30-second break. Folks, listen, what Mike's talking about, this is why we're bringing in these experts for that great conference in Cincinnati. Get your ticket now. 30-second
May
break.
11th in Cincinnati, Ohio, a powerful conference will take place. Stephen Ben-Danoon, Clyde Lewis, John Moore, and myself will be speaking on Planet X, Nibiru, the rising of the sea waters, a pole shift, what's causing the heavens to shake. You know, Jesus said they would in the last days. Go to my website, get your ticket now. You want to be at this conference in Cincinnati, Ohio. The heavens are shaking. I'll see you there. Go to my website, get your ticket now. You want to be at this conference in Cincinnati, Ohio. The heavens are shaking. I'll see you there.
Mike, you're talking about this change in the magnets in the brain. Folks, we got 3,500 people here with us right now at YouTube. And I just want you to stop for a minute. It's not a myth. Everything that Mike has been talking about for the last 6 years, we have literally the extreme weather conditions, the thunderbolts, lightning bolts killing people, the extreme weathers, the cyclone. We've had 2 cyclone bombs, guys, that we've never even heard of such a thing that happened to our middle of our nation. Matter of fact, we're seeing dust storms that are literally apocalyptic, sinkholes, volcanoes erupting, walruses committing suicide, 1,000 of them, not all at one time, one at a time. I mean, you'd think if you was a walrus, you saw one of the walruses go to the edge of the cliff and jump 500 feet, you wouldn't do it. They just kept doing it. And then look at what people are doing. Look at the craziness. Mike, I think it's already affecting us. And this is why we have to have the mind of Christ. This is why we need the Holy Spirit, Mike, to protect us from the forces of darkness. And what about 5G? Are you worried about 5G, Mike?
5G is actually, technically, it's been in place for a few years now.
What?
And that would take a couple hours to explain why that would be significant in the first place. Because it's not so much surveillance based, but it's so that one computer system can talk to another in near instant time and make a decision and then get feedback from all the nodes called a cell phone or tablet or computer out there. But and also 5G is geared to the human frequency. All Wi-Fi is anyway. That subject, Pastor Paul, that really takes a diagram or would just lose.
That's another show. That's another show. Okay.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right. So let's get back to where we're at here. I mean, obviously the waves. Okay, Mike, you told us if we can just get through the next few weeks. So where are we at now, Mike? We're sitting here looking at this thing. It's mid-April. What do you see of the next 3 months? Do you see changes, or what should be watching for the next 3 months?
Well, I know in the USA and in Europe and other places, I know that lightning rods are going to be overwhelmed. That much I can tell you. And if that happens, I hope that they have the upgrades to the grids, because that's not going to be any problems in our power grid is going to be exposed soon. And that these guys, I have to tell you this too. This is just to say it's a precaution. Some of you folks who have never heard of a flood being in your area, please don't run around with the confidence saying it'll never affect me. Don't do that, because the weather patterns are shifting so quick, so fast that many places, many people will be frightened to hear a thunderstorm is coming. Can I put it that way? They're going to be frightened to know a storm is coming. It's going to really cause some issues. It's going to cause some issues. We have storms now that span from Canada all the way down to Florida. Okay, that's our frontal systems now, and they're organized frontal systems. The Earth and the changes in the Earth are going to produce.
Why are we going to be
monsters.
afraid? Are we going to be afraid because of the static in the air, the change of the atmosphere?
Water.
Water.
Water and winds. Water and winds. Water and winds. The lightning will be sporadic at best. It's going to be very strong. Will likely overwhelm lightning rods. And once those lightning rods melt, because you'll likely hear stories that lightning rods have melted. They've been incinerated or something. When that takes place, it's going to hit the other nodes. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Like India. India has a specific mineral makeup in their soils, right? So India, what is it? Iron ore, the fourth largest reserve in the world, iron ore, right? Manganese ore, mica, what is it? Bauxite and limestone chromite are there. The USA, well, we had a lot more than that. We had a lot more than that, including lithium and silver and gold and all those things that we have piping all over the place too. India does not have piping like we have. So with a higher discharge and electric potential, if it overwhelms lightning rods and lightning stations, well, then it's going to find the next point, which is your house, which is a gas line, which is something metal. And that's going to be very unsafe, because some of these storms are going to be monster storms. And then the average storm is going to carry with it a potential to decimate. Without tornadoes, we're not talking about tornadoes and things. We're talking about winds and lots of water. So we're going to face lots of flooding here. Lots of flooding. And it's really going to cost some money, and it's going to cause people some heartache. It's going to be lots of flooding here. The atmosphere is at a point now, the retention of water in the atmosphere is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. I have not seen any calculations of the atmosphere holding this much water. Its ability to hold water is phenomenal, and these storms are of such magnitude that they're holding so much water that their strength is incredibly strong.
What about
with this? We have the magnetosphere problem. We have a charging issue in the upper atmosphere and density buildup in the upper atmosphere, which is going to cause heat. And with that, we're going to have a change in biology.
Mike, can we talk a couple more things on our plate that's very big? You brought up Brexit a couple weeks ago, about a month ago, and said, watch the enemies within. Mike, I'm getting word that the Brexit is over on March 29th. But then again, we've never heard that there is a Brexit deal. There is no deal. Can you tell us anything that you may know? I mean, they're building. I understand that the UK is actually now building in the Caribbeans and also in the Far East. They're already building some new outposts, and I don't think you can do that if you're still I mean, do you know what's going on with the Brexit?
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It's going to require a new system in those areas, a new system. Now they're doing everything that they can to, well, I'll put it this way. I'll say it again. In our houses, in the homes we live in, we have a way that we run things, right? Suppose you have kids in there and they're used to the house operating in a specific way. But you decided 4 years ago to change that way. So you put in a new system. Now you've got to get the kids to utilize a new system. How do you do that? How would you do? Well, you're an honest person, so you won't do it like everybody else does. Here's how you do that. You present to everybody, through every situation, a broken system that does not work. You let the populace come up with this phrase. We need a new way of operation. You have to let the populace do that. It has to be their choice because they are the little motors in this new system, right? By the way, government wouldn't be government without the people. You have to have the people because they are the cogs in the machine. You have to get the public to believe that the old system does not work. When they believe this, when they get tired of the old system and the breakdowns in the old system and the death of the old system, and you have to go through extremes sometimes, they will readily adopt a new system. They will reluctantly adopt it, but they will adopt it. No one lets go of anything they feel is working. No one will let go of anything they grew up with. To them, it's home. So the job of some of these forces out there is to break what people call home so that they will adopt another home. That's a very hard job. It's a very evil job. It's just something that happens. So with that being said, Pastor Paul, if you can remember that they have to destroy the old to have everybody operate by something brand new. The only way to do that is to get people not to trust or not to call home anymore. They can't call home anymore. You've got to disrupt it. It has to be disrupted. So
that's going to be part of that. That's
like that.
Well, that sounds like that's part of this globalist movement. Is they're going to have to restructure, and it's not just only in what's going on in Europe, but still the struggle between globalism and freedom, democracy is under siege here in America as well. The whole world. That's the beast system that the Bible talks about is coming in the last days. This new world order. One more question for you. India just did an emergency purchase of anti-tank missiles. And I mean, look, I know that India and Pakistan are going at each other, but are these guys getting dangerously, close to some kind of a nuclear reaction, or what do we?
It's certain things have gone. They're too far gone. I know it can hardly be perceived, right? It's something that we don't entertain. But some morning we're going to entertain. People are going to see something they would never ever imagine that would ever happen. They're going to see the unthinkable. It will take place. Perhaps you have to realize this degradation in how we think and this agitation that's going around, this violence. Violence is increasing. Suicide is increasing. Among 9-year-olds, suicide has increased. Right? That's an alarming fact. You also have all these things are increasing by way of violence. That all this is tied. It is spiritual, but it's also tied to the magnetosphere, which is a sustainer of biological organisms. These changes are messing with people's minds. It's causing a type of hopelessness. And when a person is hopeless and they're backed into a corner, they're going to bite. They're going to revert back to animalistic type behavior. It's a little more with countries. It's a little more refined than that. But the bottom line, the end result of that is a type of aggression, right? A last chance, because they feel they're being squeezed out. In my humble opinion, these leaders of these countries are not communicating honorable things, right? And it's going to come at a price. And what people are really doing is communicating what they're suppressing. Pastor Paul, here's the key to this. People have been suppressing. A lot of Christians do this too. I wish they wouldn't, and I talk about this a lot. A lot of Christians, they suppress. They say, I have to hold my tongue. Can I say this? If a person does not have anything in them, they don't have to hold their tongue because it's not in them. It must be in a person to come out. So when we say we have to hold our tongues, that means we're suppressing something inside, which is eventually going to boil over. If we are having an issue with things like that, what do they think the world is doing? We're protected by the blood of the Lamb. We're covered. Right? We're protected. We're washed. We're clean, but the world is not. And if we're having an issue with our minds, with our direction, then the world is, they're gone. They're gone. And if they're gone, they can't hold it back like we can. They don't have that spiritual discipline like we do. They don't have the mind of Christ. They only have their carnal mind. That's all they have. They don't have the mind of Christ. So their reaction is going to be extreme. Right? When they can no longer fool the people, I'm telling you now, blood will be shed. Blood will be shed. And if people would just see that, because they can make a difference. It's up to the Christians, believe it or not. The Lord tarries, yes, He does, based upon the Christians. Because when His people abandon hope, it's over. It's going to be over. but it's up to us with the last line of defense. And for the life of me, it's almost like people don't want to pray for folks anymore. It's a lot of people I don't hear talking about the power of prayer anymore, as though it doesn't exist. And so, in that, as we as Christians, I'm just saying as we collectively begin to back off of certain elemental points of our belief, the world is crumbling. Can't we see that correlation? That when we have a rough day believing, the world falls apart. And when we believe strongly, repair comes to the world, right? But
exactly. We have to be the ones that lead the way. Mike, we're out of time. Thank you. So can we get you back on May 2nd? That's 2 weeks from tonight. May 2nd, a Thursday night at 10 o'clock.
That'd be good. That'd be good, Pastor Paul.
Mike, this is amazing. Amazing tonight. You were amazing tonight with this great information, insight. Thank you so much, brother. We'll see you in a couple weeks. God bless.